And we are live. There it is. Welcome, folks. This is really exciting. I'm really happy to be here tonight. There's a lot going on tonight. If you're a sports fan, you know exactly what I'm talking about, especially if you're a DC sports fan. Not going to talk about sports here today, folks, but it's a big night in the DC area. Let me get some of this stuff straight here. Of course, there we go. My video was playing over top and I could hear it and it was bothering me. So anyway, let's get to it. I've got one quick thing to update you on, and then I'm going to introduce my special guest, which I cannot tell you how excited I am to have him here with me today. But what I want to update you on is something very quick and very simple. Next week, KGTropicals.com is going to get something on there that's going to be big, and I'm so excited about it. This is something that's been in the works for about a month now. It's something that most likely you want, because I know what my followers want. I know what they're looking for, and this is one of those things that you're looking for. I promise you, and that's why we're bringing it in, because we know you're looking for it. So really excited about that. It's supposed to happen on Tuesday. We're supposed to actually get it in our possession. When we do, I will talk about it. It'll be on Instagram, Facebook. It'll be everywhere. So be looking forward to that. But there you go. That's enough. That's enough of that. Let's get right into what we're here to talk about today. If you've been following along with me over the course of the last several months, you know that I have dabbled into saltwater a little bit. Now, doing an entire live stream about saltwater is going to frustrate some people, because people have been nervous that I'm transitioning everything over to saltwater. But I can promise you that's not the case. My freshwater tanks are here to stay. They're not going anywhere. I'm adding this to the hobby because it's just something new. And after 20-something years of keeping fish, that's pretty important to do something new and do something fresh. Started my first saltwater tank earlier this year. Had a blast with it. I've been really enjoying it. There's been some frustrations with it too, and I'll talk with my guest about that today. But started my second saltwater tank within the last few weeks. This one I want to do exclusively as a reef. And it's my first reef. It's the first time I've ever put anything in the tank that's not fish or rocks. And so I'm a little bit nervous about it. And I've been reaching out. I've been talking to people. I've been trying to find somebody to come on here and help a freshwater guy out, help a cichlid guy out with, teach me about corals. Tell me what I need to know about keeping a reef, and not only keeping it, but keeping it successfully. And fortunately for me, I was able to lock this guy down, which this guy was absolutely one of my top 3 choices, I guess. I hope he's not insulted by me saying that, but he knows how it is. There's a lot of people out there that do what he does, and reached out to a few, and this guy was the first. Well, there he is. This guy was the first to say yes, and I'm so excited about it. Talking about Thein from Tidal Gardens. I don't know if you want me to call it Tidal Gardens Inc. Thein, you can tell me when you introduce yourself.
Tidal Gardens is fine.
Okay, Tidal Gardens, you all know what Tidal Gardens is, because not only does he have a very reputable coral business, coral propagation business, I guess is what you want to call it. Again, I'm new to this, but he's also got a very large YouTube channel where he showcases his corals, talks about care and all that kind of stuff. So what better guy to bring on here to help a loser like me keep a successful coral tank or reef tank? So Thein, I cannot tell you how much I appreciate this. Actually, I already have, because we talked privately and I told you how excited I was to have you on here. I'm so stoked about this. I'm really glad you agreed to do it. Now, I want you to just go ahead and take the opportunity to advertise yourself, introduce yourself, tell these people who you are, because most of these people are cichlid people. They might not have seen you before.
So thanks for having me. Yeah, just as John said, Tidal Gardens is a coral farm that's located in Ohio. It's something that I started up probably close to 15 years ago. I had done like a little business plan just as a school project when I was in college. And eventually that business plan kind of turned into, kind of just got me started into the whole idea of commercializing this hobby of mine. And that business plan actually won like $30-something thousand in these business plan competitions. And that whole thing kind of started the business, but it was like an on again, off again, part-time thing for many, many years, until finally one day I just got kind of sick of my office job and I decided to just pursue it full time. So I guess I'm one of the lucky people that have gotten to monetize their hobby and kind of make a living doing what most people just do as pure recreation. I get to do to pay the bills. So yeah, my website is tidalgardens.com. That's really where I sell most of the corals. We do have some visitors come to the greenhouse, but it's not open to the public. It's all by appointment and stuff like that. So mainly everything is through the website, and the YouTube channel is called Tidal Gardens. If you guys are reef people, I think the only other places where you may have seen or heard of me would be I'm a writer for Coral magazine, and I guess Coral has a freshwater counterpart called Amazonas. So I don't know if you're familiar with that publication, but so those are like two sister magazines. I write for them. I write for a couple blogs like Saltwater Smarts and Reef to Rainforest, and I've done some stuff with the BBC, the Discovery Channel, and the Smithsonian. So a bunch of random stuff, but today I think we're going to be talking about some of the more beginner corals because John's just getting started into this.
Well, yeah, and my God, I mean, I feel like you could just go so much farther advanced than what we're going to do today. This is going to be almost like kindergarten for you, like Billy Madison going back to school. But, you know, everybody has to start somewhere. And I'm somebody at my advanced years, I'm practically a senior citizen now. I've learned patience, and I've learned that I enjoy something more when I take my time and I just do it right, and do it right the first time. I know I'm still going to make mistakes. I mean, that's a guarantee. But what better way to get success right off the bat than to have somebody like you on here to help me out? And I mean, with the resume you just read, my God, you know, I don't know that I could have picked somebody better. So very cool. BBC and Smithsonian and all of that. I mean, geez, you know, like
it's for random stuff though. I mean, I say that because it happened, but it's for like really random stuff. So, I mean, just to be a little bit self-deprecating, I think that one of them licensed some footage of starfish. And I mean, I do coral, just pure corals, but I happen to shoot a little bit of starfish stuff. So they licensed a whole bunch of that footage, things like that.
Nice. Okay. Well, hey, I mean, still, who cares?
Yeah, it happened.
Doesn't matter what it is. It happened. That's all that matters. So, all right, this is what I want to do, because, I mean, you and I, we spoke for the first time, I think, last week. We spent some time on a hangout like this, and we didn't really get to know each other, but we talked about what we were going to be doing here. I didn't really tell you much about what I have. I mean, I want to get right into it. The introductions are done. We all know you're the man when it comes to this stuff. So I want to tell you what I have, and then, you know, hopefully you can kind of guide me in the right direction of getting the tank ready for corals. Because I feel like, and maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like that's the best way to start this, is not jump right into what corals should we keep, but, you know, how to prepare the tanks properly for them. I know, me personally, I have logged, I don't even know how many hours into videos about reef keeping and all of that. And even the beginner reef keeping videos that I've watched are completely overwhelming. All of this sophisticated equipment and all of these monitors and reactors and all of this stuff that I don't even really understand what they do. My hope is that, you know, it can be simplified and not overly complicated like that. So, but let me tell you what I have, and then, you know, we can go from there. And if I do need to add some things before you think I'll be ready to place my first order on tidalgardens.com, you can definitely let me know. I have two tanks. One is a 24-gallon, one is a 13-gallon. They're both fluval all-in-one systems. The 13-gallon is the one that I want to go full reef. The 24-gallon, I want to put anemones in there. I've got clowns in there. I've got a fire shrimp in there and a blue damsel. I want to put anemones in there because clowns, anemones, you know. So that is what I want to do there. It is, I mean, I've got protein skimmers on both of these. The Fluval brand protein skimmers that are made specifically for these units. It's the Fluval M60, the M series, and the Evo series. That's what I have. They're both heated. I mean, I don't know really what more there is to talk about as far as the systems themselves go. The Clown tank, the 24-gallon, has been running for about 6 months, so I don't think there's any issue as far as, you know, it's good and cycled and ready to go. The 13-gallon, though, is brand new. Set it up 2 weeks ago. But I used live rock, which I know you're against, but I used live rock that was already, I don't know what you call it, you can tell me, but cultured or seeded or whatever you want to call it at a local pet store.
Or something like that. I think that's
there you go.
The going term, I guess.
Okay, yeah. Local pet store that I bought it from, I felt like I could trust them. I felt like they were going to give me a good, clean product. So that's why I chose to go that route. So there's live rock in there, and I used live sand. You know, the fish store owner told me, "Oh yeah, you'll be ready in a week. You know, no problem." I don't know. You're the expert. I mean, he's had his store for 29 years, so I think he's probably an expert too. But you know, I'd love to get your input on that, on as far as, you know, whether you think it's ready or not. But that's what I've got. I mean, it's not overly complicated. It's two very simple systems.
So I tend to be pretty conservative on setting up tanks and when it's safe to stock them and your best chances for success. So, and I'm probably conservative about nothing else in life, but when it comes to that initial startup of a tank, basically the longer you can wait, the better. So 6 months, that's a pretty good time period, because the cycle usually only takes maybe 6 weeks or so. But for whatever reason, a tank just in that 6 month to 1 year period of aging really becomes a lot more stable. And it's hard to kind of quantify that. I mean, it's not going to really show up in a test kit or anything like that. But whatever you put into it, like after that 1 year mark, is going to have a lot greater chance of success, at least as far as corals go. There's one thing that's kind of working against you a little bit. It's the size of the aquarium. There's a couple of different reasons why larger aquariums in general are easier to keep. Like the big one I would say is chemical stability. So things happen quickly in smaller volumes of water. I'm sure that's true with freshwater as well.
Oh, yeah.
In saltwater, it's kind of exaggerated though. If you kind of remember back to like high school chemistry, like what a titration is, it's when you take one chemical and you drip it drop by drop into another chemical, and at some point that last drop is like the straw that breaks the camel's back, and the entire thing turns a different color. So that's kind of a demonstration of like the buffering capacity of the system. Well, when you kind of test the buffering capacity in saltwater, it usually means everything's dead. So it'll look fine until the moment that it dies. And unfortunately, that tends to happen a lot sooner in smaller volumes. So chemical stability comes with larger aquariums. So right now, like a 13-gallon is really pretty tiny. I mean, there's a whole movement around really small tanks like the Nanos and the Picos and stuff like that. It's at the cutting edge of the most challenging aspects of the hobby. The other reason why like larger tanks are kind of a little bit more desirable, and this is, I think the freshwater analog I could probably think is like Plecostomus, where it's an incredibly good algae eater that keeps your glass clean, that sort of thing. There are fish in saltwater that do a really, really, really good job of doing a lot of the maintenance activities. And unfortunately, they tend to require larger aquariums. So for example, if you have certain pests, there's usually like a fish that'll handle that pest, but you kind of need to have a larger aquarium, which it simply would not work in like a 24-gallon, for example. So yeah, I guess like those are just some thoughts on initial setup. But in general, the longer you take to both cycle and also to research topics, the better off you'll be. And I think that I just made up some numbers, but like for every hour that you spend online researching, it's going to save you like $1,000 in that first year. I mean, you can blow through hordes of cash doing the hobby very poorly, and it's a cost no object path to failure. If you do it poorly, you can spend as much money as you like and have suboptimal results.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've never been guilty of doing things the easy way. I mean, this now, full disclosure with these tanks, I mean, I love them. And I know that there's limitations to them. I mean, because, they're small tanks. I get that. And I kind of wanted that because I know saltwater tanks are just like freshwater tanks, and that the bigger you go, the easier they are to keep. A shift in parameters is going to take a lot longer in a larger body of water. I get that. But, two things here. One, Fluval sent me these because they wanted me to show them on videos and review them and stuff like that. So there's that. And then also, I really liked the idea of having a small tank right here on my desk. I mean, it's right here. You can't see it, but it's right there that I get to stare in it all day long. And again, I mean, I wasn't going to tell Fluval no, heck no.
No.
Go ahead. So I'm excited to have them. And you know what? I'm excited for the challenge. I feel like using these smaller tanks, going in knowing that smaller tanks are more difficult to care for, I feel like if I can master these, when I do go to upgrade to a 150-gallon reef tank or whatever, I've got a couple of 75s laying around, it'll be easier for me. That's the way I looked at it was, let's get the hard stuff over with first, and then I'll be ready to move forward into the bigger tanks, hopefully without wasting that money. But the good thing, like I said earlier, you're talking about time. Well, I've got plenty of that, and I have plenty of patience for that. So that's a good thing. I'm not excited to wait 6 months to do something with this little one on my desk. We're going to have to do something. But the bigger one has been running for 6 months or so, maybe even longer than that. I don't know. So that one's probably going to be ready to go. But again, I know there's limitations. I mean, it's no different than, you're not going to get a 13-gallon freshwater tank and put Oscars in it. If you're a horrible person, you can, but you're not going to do that. Saltwater is the same kind of a way. I've seen corals that are, as big as a human being. I know I'm not going to put something like that in there. And we'll definitely get into that as we move forward here. I'm okay with the limitations, though. I mean, I've seen a lot of really pretty reef nano tanks, and I'm excited at the prospect of being able to do that. But before we move into, corals that you would suggest, is there any piece of equipment? Is there anything that you feel like I should add to these? I mean, like I said, pump is going pretty strong. I have a circulation pump in the larger tank. The Nano, I do not have a circulation pump. But the return on the Evo has the 2 nozzles, so I can point them in 2 different directions. So you may suggest a small circulation pump. I don't know, but is there anything with either one of these 2 tanks that you would suggest that I add before I entertain getting corals?
No, not necessarily. I think that, so a while back I had taken a step back from the saltwater hobby and didn't really have anything going on for like a couple years. And when I got back into it, people were talking about stuff that I literally have never heard of. And I started doing this hobby when I was about 8 years old. So at that point, I was probably doing saltwater for about 20-something years. And to have not heard of any of this stuff was pretty strange, because there isn't a lot of like very fast innovation in this. I mean, a protein skimmer that's been around since like the 1930s. So like GFO, I had no idea what that was. And the guy was like, well, it's granular ferric oxide. I'm like, oh, okay. I don't know what that is either. And so there was like this learning curve as just to what a lot of the new innovations were to begin with. Then came the question of how much of this stuff was really necessary. And that's where you get into a situation where there's a lot of different ways to be successful at this hobby. So to say that there's a piece of equipment out there that's absolutely essential there's very few things that make that list, like that you cannot do without. Like, well, you cannot do without lighting unless you run like a complete non-photosynthetic system, which practically nobody does. I mean, like we're talking ones of people in this country probably have a non-photosynthetic system, like a successful one. I mean, there's plenty of crappy failure non-photos systems, but to have really great ones, I mean, very few public aquariums have good ones. So like lighting would be on that list. Certain pumps just to move water would be on that list. But just about everything else is, a lot of things will help, but I would just say that something is absolutely necessary is probably not accurate. You can, if you were willing to do consistent water changes, like pretty much every week to maybe every 3 days, like small water changes, you could even do without the skimmers. But you kind of have to be honest with yourself about what kind of maintenance are you really going to be able to perform. And, you know, that's when, just a little bit of self-analysis is going to be determinative on whether you need that skimmer or a GFO reactor or anything of the sort. Because I think that so sometimes when it comes to maintenance, people they approach it like when they get asked how much they work out or how much they floss. It's like, oh yeah, I work out tons. I floss all the time. When was the last time you flossed? 2 years ago. That sort of thing. You know, it's just, yeah. So if you do water changes every week, you could get away with using a lot less equipment. But the chances of somebody religiously sticking with that schedule, not everybody can do it. So yeah, I think that if you wanted just to have a bare bones simple system, you're talking about circulation, lighting, and a protein skimmer. And anything up above that, it's going to be kind of just extra.
A luxury.
And yeah, a luxury, and there's going to be like some diminishing returns. And there's no magic bullet to everything. I mean, just adding GFO, you could do it poorly and just kind of strip away all the nutrients in your tank and cause everything to die. I mean, everything that's not a protein skimmer, a pump, and lighting kind of has its drawbacks as well.
Yeah, you know, when I bought this live rock, when I was there, Lisa and I spent 3 hours at this pet store, and I said this in a video that I'm going to be uploading this weekend. I said, one of the sure signs that you had a good experience at a pet store or a fish store is that if you walk out feeling better than when you walked in and feeling more confident about what you're doing. And when I walked in there, I was the deer in the headlights. You know, I'm like, okay, I know nothing about saltwater, about reefing, you know, teach me. And the guy, the owner of the store, was the most patient man in the world. He spent a ton of time with me. And one of the biggest pieces of advice that he gave me was almost verbatim what you just said, which is, you know, if you're not lazy, if you are willing to do the work, you can do this stuff without all of that fancy equipment. Because I was walking in there with money in my pocket, like, all right, what do I need to buy to make this tank run properly? And he was like, you don't need to buy any of this stuff. I'll sell it to you, but you don't need to buy this stuff. You know, you have a 13-gallon tank. I mean, it's sitting right there in front of your face. Just do your water changes and you'll be fine. All of the things that these big pieces of equipment control, you can control with water changes. And that was like a huge relief for me. Because the thing I say is the more stuff you add to the tank, the more opportunity you have for things to go wrong and costing you money and all of those other things. So I was really relieved to hear that. And I'm so relieved to hear you say the same thing, because I'm not afraid to spend money and you know, put things in that are going to make the experience and the life of the animals that are inside of that tank better. I'm not afraid to do that, but if I don't need to, then yay, that makes everything all better. So I'm excited. I mean, I have everything that you were suggesting in there. I guess, I mean, do they make a circulation pump small enough for a 13-gallon tank? I mean, everything that I've seen has been...
They do, but so there's two ways to go about it. You can get a really cheap tiny pump, or you can get a really expensive controllable pump and turn it way down. So I guess there's choices. But
Okay.
I guess I just remembered, just because there's an expensive piece of equipment out there, it doesn't mean that it can't fail spectacularly. So at one point I used a dosing pump, which is kind of like it's a peristaltic pump that it's used in hospitals and stuff like that. And it's supposed to dose like 2 milliliters a day of something, and just like clockwork, just doses this 2 mLs a day. Well, sometimes those get stuck on, and it just empties the entire bottle of whatever you're planning to add over the course of like 6 months into your tank that night. So, I mean, even with like with the sweet technology, things could go sideways in a hurry. And so, for my systems, I should probably have described my system here. It's roughly 5,000 gallons, and it is as low tech as you could possibly imagine. We have a lot of stuff just because there's a lot of surface area to cover. We have big skimmers on every system. The lighting isn't even on timers. Like, we go in there and physically turn them on and off. Like, I don't even trust timers for lights because there's plenty of situations where a light gets stuck on, and that is way worse than a light not coming on that day. So having like a light run 24 hours can usually kill something. So yeah, when it comes to a lot of like the really fancy stuff, I tend to shy away from it a little bit, even though the market, as far as like the reef aquarium technology goes, it is skewing really, really hard towards supreme automation. And like pretty much everything is like an iPhone app. And I'm like, yeah, I don't want any of that. I want dinosaur technology that doesn't fail. I want like some 70s Ford Mustang, super simple engine. That is all. No cruise control, nothing.
Yeah, when I was at that pet store, the owner there was talking to me. They also sell tanks and setups and maintain them and all of that. And they installed a 1,200 gallon tank, just like the one they have on display in their store in a guy's house. And we were talking about costs and all of this kind of stuff. And he said something like he had something like 80 grand into this tank. And I was like, what? And he says like, yeah, well, you had this and you had that. And the guy wanted every bell and whistle on the planet. And he had an iPad there at the shop, and he pulled up the iPad, and I guess it's called the Apex system. He was like, look at this. I can show you his lighting, and I can show you his water parameters and all of this kind of stuff. And he's like, if I want to play a joke on him, I can turn his lighting off or turn it up, and he won't even know that it's me. And I was like, wow. I mean, I don't know of anything that's like that in the freshwater hobby. That just blew my mind. And so I suppose if you're somebody that has an unlimited budget, you're a pro ball player, or you're, somebody that owns a Fortune 500 company, and you just say, this is what I want, Brett and Wade, come out here and build me this huge system. I guess you can get all of those bells and whistles, but I'm relieved, and hopefully the viewers are too, if there's somebody like me that wants to get into this, that wants to start. One of the things that held me back was like, well, I mean, I don't want to buy all that stuff. I don't want to get all those fancy things. They're cool and all, but I'd like to start simple. And I didn't think that you could do that. But since you're telling me, and others have told me that you can do it simply, then I'm really excited about that. And hopefully the viewers are too, because, you can get into this and not have to take out a second mortage. I mean,
I'm seeing in chat here people talking about the apexes. We actually do run apexes. There's a total of 5 running in my greenhouse right now. But the only thing I'm using them for is to monitor my tanks. So let me just pull this up in my phone real quick. So like real quick on the phone, this is the most valuable thing for me, is right there. So I have all 5 of my, it's not going to focus. Oh, well, it's all 5 of my systems. I can see the pH going on inside my calcium reactor, because I don't care about the pH of the water in my tank. That's almost irrelevant. But that and the temperature, like those are the 2 things I care about. And I can check this anywhere in the world. And that is very, 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 very valuable to me. Just being able to tell me what it thinks it's seeing. Now, where the lack of trust comes in is, if you think that the temperature is too low, I don't want you to do anything about it, because I don't believe you all the time, this particular apex. So just tell me what you think is going on. and I'll verify it myself. That's all I care about. But there's folks that have like absolutely every detail of their tank mapped out on their apex, like you had mentioned with lighting and everything, and how they could change all the lighting profiles. And one of the guys that works at my place, like he loves that. So he loves tinkering with that. And all I could think is, why on earth would you want to change your lighting all the time? Like, that does not sound like a good time to me. Why are you changing your color spectrum all the time on your phone?
Just because he wants to show it to his friends and say he can, probably.
Yeah, that's a great way to get your lights stuck on too. So
yeah,
anyway.
I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. If I could have something that I could pull up on my phone that would tell me the pH and everything and nitrates and all ammonia in these tanks, I would do it. I mean, I absolutely would. I could see that being valuable. And I'm not saying I'll never have one in the future. I mean, I could certainly see. I kind of have a problem, and it's when I go into something, I can't stop. I just go and go and go. There's always got to be something new. And so I could see, if I'm going to invest a lot of money into a large tank and big money into corals and all that kind of stuff, I could see wanting to have a system like that to just give me a general idea of what's going on. Doesn't do the job for me, doesn't, take all of the work away from me, but it's there just to let me sleep better at night. I could see doing that, but not now. I mean, down the road someday maybe, but certainly not for a 13-gallon or a 24-gallon, but I could see it being something to add down the road. Absolutely.
Yeah. And there's a bunch of different monitors. I think that Neptune Apex is like the best known in the Reef aquarium side, but there's quite a few others, like Fishbit. I mean, they're kind of like a new player, and and they only do monitoring, which is kind of nice. But I was just thinking about how you're saying that the Reef side has all the crazy technology and like the crazy expensive technology. So I have a counter argument to that. So
here we go.
we have something called a calcium reactor in the Reef aquarium hobby, which basically it's a single chamber, and it's recirculating salt water in it, and a little bit of water comes in and a little bit of water goes out. But while it's in the reactor, we're bubbling in carbon dioxide to lower the pH, to dissolve, like basically crushed coral media, to release some calcium and carbonate ions and stuff like that to help stony corals grow. So this is a way to continue to replenish and to maintain calcium levels, so that the stony corals, as they're growing, they suck up this calcium to make sure that they always have some more to grow. Anyway, are the regulators that bubble in the carbon dioxide in the Reef aquarium side are junk. They're like $100 throwaway units, and it could be really bad when these things like just fail all of a sudden. So I'm thinking, the freshwater guys, they take the carbon dioxide stuff a little bit more seriously, because they're usually bubbling it directly into their aquarium to provide a carbon source for their plants. So I was looking into some of that, and some of you guys are spending $1,000 on your regulators.
Oh my God.
Yeah, but they're not just starting at 1,000. They're like, or I should say, they are starting at just 1,000. They're doing like a DIY thing where they start with $1,000 unit, and then they rip it all apart, and then add in premium components on top of that. So then they have a $1,500 custom regulator for their freshwater.
This is why people say fish keepers are crazy, because we do stuff like that. But I mean, we're all saltwater, freshwater, doesn't matter. We're all guilty of wanting to do what's best for our fish. But my God, I mean, yeah, okay, you can say that this one regulator is more expensive, but come on, saltwater is way more expensive than freshwater. But still, we could debate that all day long.
Are we counting Koi? Because if we're talking Koi, then there's no comparison.
Well, I mean, yeah, okay. There are some and arowanas, and there are some exotic fish that cost outrageous amounts of money. Sure, ponds, people put $150,000 ponds in their backyard. So yeah, there certainly is stuff in the freshwater hobby that can get up there in cost too. But you know what? We're going a little bit too far off. As fun as that is, let's try to get back on here with because I need these questions answered. It's not just for the viewers; I need them too. So let's stay on the topic of water parameters, because you're talking about all of these advanced systems that cost thousands of dollars to monitor water parameters. But what about me? What about a guy like me that has this little starter test kit that was given to me at the pet store that I went to, because the guy was like, this is discontinued, and one of the reps just dropped it off and gave it to me. It was brand new in the wrap when he gave it to me. But, you know, as far as test kits go, this is what I've got. And I also do have a calcium test kit API. But talk to me about the water parameters, things that I need to test, things that I need to know. Ammonia, nitrate, I mean, that's all common sense. But what are the other things that I need to monitor, and what should those levels be for me to get this tank ready for corals?
Okay, so we're going to ignore the nitrogen cycling stuff, right? So that's sort of, people do those tests typically just when they start the tank, and then they never revisit those later on. They might do nitrate later, but generally speaking, in a properly functioning reef aquarium, the nitrate levels should be very, very close to zero. It's only when there's stuff that's clearly going wrong that you might want to revisit the nitrate test and see what's up. But aside from that, there's kind of like this holy trinity of alkalinity that you kind of want to take a look at. So you're going to be testing for calcium. You're going to be testing for basically the carbonate level, or general alkalinity, quote unquote, and magnesium. And so that's kind of like this this triangle that has kind of like an inverse relationship. So if you wanted to bump up your calcium, for example, and you just started adding in like a calcium supplement, it might reduce the other two by doing so. So you kind of have to play with that triangle of magnesium, alkalinity, and calcium. So keeping an eye on those three parameters is helpful. Now, usually the test kit will tell you what is in natural salt water. So calcium levels are going to hover right around like the 425 parts per million mark, 1350 for magnesium, and roughly 8 to 10 DKH for alkalinity. And that's DKH stands for like degree of carbonate hardness. So if you can, generally speaking, stay close to natural saltwater levels, that's kind of where you want to be. Now, the test kits that we have at our disposal aren't the most accurate things in the world. So I tend to not try to chase numbers with them. So if things in my tank are looking great, but my calcium is not 425, it's like 400, or maybe it's 480, but it's far off from natural salt water, I'm not going to lower it or raise it trying to chase anything. I'm going to just to keep it as stable as possible, because stability of your tank is probably the most important thing for long-term success.
Okay, and you know, I tested my calcium, and it came up at 420, so I'm close, I guess, right? And that's without doing anything on there. I mean, that's basically, you know, that's just RO water, you know, with salt mixed in it. I haven't done anything to increase calcium, so unless the substrate, I use live sand, maybe, I don't know. So I guess that's good to hear. But now, as far as I don't know if this is like, you know, the hairy homeowner test kit, or if this is one that all of you experienced reefers would make fun of me for, but I see an alkalinity test, but then I see NH3, NH4, NO2, and NO3. Are any of those magnesium, or do I need to buy an actual magnesium test?
You need to, well, okay, yeah, that's the other thing. In that triangle, the least important is magnesium. Okay. So usually people, it's a good thing to check magnesium if calcium and alkalinity are just acting crazy. Because magnesium there's a really, really, really long article you can read online written by an actual chemist about it. But magnesium helps keep the other two more stable through like some buffering interactions. So if your calcium and alkalinity are just swinging wildly up and down, it might be because you have low magnesium. So stuff like that.
Okay. I mean, I'm glad you broke it down to the 3 because, again, I'm looking at this and I'm like, what are all these N numbers? What is all this? I automatically assume N equals nitrates. So I'm like, what is all this?
NO3 is nitrate. And
NO3
so,
is nitrate.
Yeah, NO2 is nitrite, which is toxic. NH4 is ammonia, which is super toxic. You can even smell that. So usually when the nitrogen cycle starts, you get ammonia, that NH4, and it smells. Then it goes to NO2, still toxic. If you add something in there, it will die. And then nitrate, NO3, is tolerated by fish to a large degree, not tolerated well by coral. And so I guess kind of comparing and contrasting to the freshwater side, the reason why you don't see a lot of stuff like trickle filters and things like that in reef tanks is because those are using a lot of aerobic bacteria to break down ammonia very efficiently into nitrate. And that is great for fish systems, but in coral systems, that's really what you want to avoid. So you typically don't see any kind of trickle or bioball type thing going on in the saltwater reef side. Fish only side, sure, but not in reefs, not typically.
Okay. So would you suggest, I mean, with a kit like this, and then I didn't plan this, I just happened to have them sitting here. I mean, should I be okay? This is just a little API calcium kit that I picked up at my distributor because it was cheap. And then this was given to me, but should I be good, or should I get something to monitor magnesium too?
No, you're probably fine. Unless stuff is acting really goofy, you're fine. And the fact that you're testing is great. A lot of hobbyists on the saltwater side don't test very frequently. And there's, if you ever wanted to get super bewildered, look at the additive market when it comes to saltwater. It's like going to GNC. There's a booster for everything. And it's like, I didn't even know that I was like missing branched chain amino acids. Sort of, that's like a weightlifting thing. Like BCAAs. I need BCAAs now. Like that's why I can't get big. But that's kind of like what it is in the reef aquarium side. There's tons of stuff. And so I get asked a lot on my YouTube channel. It's like, hey, should I be adding this? And I'm like, you should add nothing that you aren't actively testing for. That'll make life simple. Are you testing for it? Then you don't have to worry about it. Like, don't add it blindly. That's like the worst thing you could do.
Yeah, and a lot of this is showing similarities to the freshwater side because fish keepers, not just fresh or salt, but fish keepers are notorious for overthinking things and overdoing things and making things more complicated than they need to be. And this is why I'm so relieved that we're having this conversation, because on my freshwater side, on my videos, I've always tried to keep it simple. Just keep everything bare bones. Let's not overwhelm each other with a bunch of crap. Let's just keep this simple to where everybody, newcomers, experienced, whatever, can follow. I thought that was out of reach with saltwater, coming into this. With fish only, I know that's a different deal than reefs. But since I knew this Evo was coming and I knew I was going to want to do corals in it, I just immediately just became a sponge and started looking into all these things. And I was immediately overwhelmed with all of the stuff and all of these numbers and all of these reactors and this and that. Like, oh, dear God, I don't know if this is something I'm going to be able to keep up with. So this is actually a very big relief for me that, I mean, I know it's not easy. I got to do my work, and I'm not afraid of that. But I like that. I like that it's not as complicated as I thought. And to be honest, that's one of the things that kept me away from saltwater. And I think it's probably one of the things that keeps a lot of people away from saltwater is, one, they think, or maybe not saltwater, but reefs, is one, that it's too complicated, and two, they think it's going to be too expensive. Both of those things, you, not me, I can't say we, but you have kind of debunked. And I have learned that those are not necessarily the truth too, in my short time doing this. So that's cool. I mean, if you're somebody that's watching this and you're entertaining the idea of starting a reef, I'm not going to tell you from my experience that it's easy, but it might not be as complicated as you're thinking, because I was just like you just a few weeks ago, thinking that it was just going to be way too out of reach. So, all right. So then I'm happy to know that I'm good as far as being able to test what I need to test. So that's exciting. And I'm happy that my calcium I'm not going to have to mess with that all that much until I put corals in. I know that's coming because a lot of corals are going to consume that calcium, if I understand that correctly. I'm sure we'll get into that as we move on. But before we, last thing before we actually start talking corals, which is what I'm really looking forward to, lighting. Lighting in the freshwater hobby is no different than the saltwater hobby. That's another one of those things that people go absolutely bananas over. And I love a nicely lit tank. Don't get me wrong. Mine are all pretty bright. But is there specific... Don't start talking to me about par levels and all that kind of stuff, because I don't understand all that. Is there like... I lost the word. Exact type of, things that you need, like specific types of lighting and all of that, to be able to successfully keep a reef? Or should I be good on my systems with the ones that came, which are advertised as reef lighting?
Lighting is probably the most hotly debated topic when it comes to like the reef side of things. Like more than filtration method, more than anything, you have people trying to optimize lighting, and people get into some like blood feuds over the different types of lighting that's out there. On the reef side, I would say that the vast majority of the marketplace is kind of going all in on LED. And LED has some nice benefits to it. It's very easily controllable. It is a lot more energy efficient. It is a lot cooler. So it's not a big space heater like a metal halide lamp is, for example. And the prices are coming down. The downside is that people get into this hobby for aesthetics. They want stuff to look really pretty. And corals they're very, to varying degrees, they can color up differently under different types of lighting. And unfortunately, they usually color up the worst under LED. And that itself is a controversial statement. I have no doubt in my mind how true that is, because I have tried literally every kind of light possible, and I get the best results and stuff that is not LED. So, but if you're purchasing lighting for all those other reasons, the controllability, energy efficiency, bulb life, they last practically forever. The entire electrical enclosure, like the enclosure, the fans, all the electricals will die before that LED will die. So if you buy it for that reason, great. It will absolutely exceed all your expectations. But if it's coral growth and coral coloration that you're after, you're going to get better results with either fluorescent bulbs or with metal halide. It's just they just simply have a more robust spectrum. Yeah. So what typically comes in small aquariums is almost exclusively going to be LED, and there's probably a good reason for that. You just don't want to cook a small volume of water. But in my systems right now, we are pretty much removing all the LEDs and switching over to T5 fluorescents right now.
I saw you did a video recently where you got a new light, and you were talking about, it was a T5, and you were talking about it was inexpensive and stuff like that. And it caught my attention, because anytime you say inexpensive, I'm all in. So I was excited to see that. But you're right. I mean, all of the systems that I've seen, I went to the aquatic experience in Chicago last year, which is how I got hooked up with Fluval. And, they have a lot of these all-in-one Nano freshwater and saltwater kits, and they all come with LEDs. I literally, every single tank you see here is lit with LEDs. And so, yeah, it is kind of the way things are going. But I know the tank I'm about to talk about has never been on YouTube, but long time ago, the tank that I owned and maintained that I was the most proud of had T5 lighting on it. It has nothing to do with what we're talking about right now, but I mean, So I'm a fan of both. I mean, the reason why I have LEDs right now, there's a lot of reasons why, but mainly these two that we're talking about today, that's what came with them. So I'm not opposed to changing them. With the Evo, I would have to change the lid and everything because the light is kind of incorporated into the lid. But maybe when we do finally, in a couple of seconds here, actually get into types of corals and things like that, maybe you can suggest to me the ones that would work best in my lighting situation. Sure. With these LEDs, because and let's just do it. Let's just get into it, because I think that's where we are in my list now. Yes, we are. I have kind of an outline that I'm trying to stick with here, and we are finally to the part where we get to talk about the corals, which is exciting. I feel like we've talked about what needs to be talked about to get it ready. At least you've made me feel good about it. So now it's time to get into it, the real deal here. I know there are 3 types of corals. At least that's what I've gathered so far. Can you take as much time as you need? I was going to say briefly, but why would I insult you that way? Take as much time as you need. Explain what those 3 different types of corals are, and maybe briefly get into the significances between the 3.
I think there's more than 3, but there's let's just talk in broad categories. So there's stony corals, and then there's soft corals. And stony means that it has actually like a skeleton. So if it dies, it leaves behind those pretty little white things they sell as like jewelry or whatever the heck, just some curio thing. A soft coral has no skeleton. When it dies, it leaves nothing but snot, and then that blows away. So generally speaking, those are the 2 worlds that that the stuff lives in, or the 2 flavors of corals, let's just say. Now, if you were to look at it from like the 30,000-foot view, the majority of soft corals will be easier to care for than the majority of stony corals. But there are exceptions. There are some stony corals that are pretty close to unkillable, and there are soft corals that are nearly impossible to keep. So there's always going to be some exceptions to that rule. But I think that most people, when they're starting out, if anyone's going to make a recommendation for them, start off with the soft corals. Many of them will be kind of low maintenance, very resistant to some degree of neglect. Their coloration will stay more consistent, because certain stony corals, if you provide the wrong conditions, they can go from the most brilliant red and yellow glowing coral to brown one day to dead the next day. So yeah, and literally it is dead the next day. It could be completely healthy one day, 6 hours later, completely no flesh left on the bone. And you're thinking, what happened in the last 6 hours? Like, why now? And there's no answer for you. It just decided to go. And so generally speaking, that's why people steer beginners away from the stony side of things, because there's a lot more variables at play, some of which still confound very, very experienced hobbyists. Yeah, in a nutshell.
Well, and if there's one thing I know that gets fish keepers or aquarium keepers out of the hobby, it's things that are so difficult to keep that they're always dying. So, the fastest way out of a reef hobby, I would imagine, would be going and spending big money, because corals aren't cheap, and they all end up dying. It's like, why am I even going to bother with this? So,
or poor tank, or they got bad advice on what they could keep with the coral. A lot of times, if you rely on like 1 or 2 sources of information, you might get led astray, just for the simple fact that that one person just may have had a particular experience with a particular fish, and they said it's fine, it's not a big deal. But 9 times out of 10, that fish eats coral. And it's closer to like 99% of the time it eats coral, and they got into that 1% where it didn't eat coral, and then it died on its own. And so it never ate coral. But there's plenty of things you can add into a reef tank that is not. So you'll hear the term reef safe. Certain things are at different degrees of reef safe, meaning like, will it chomp down on all of my expensive coral? Because some of these corals, they're expensive. They're like hundreds of dollars for an inch. So you definitely don't want it, to be jeopardized just because you really like that pretty little redfish over there. You add it into your tank and it eats a house payment worth of corals that evening.
Mm. All right. Well, then, okay. I have a question that I have to ask you that is kind of a ad-lib question here, but you've scared me because there is a fish and invertebrate combo that I'm obsessed with right now. You probably already know just by me saying that it's a fish invertebrate combo. The Watchman goby with the pistol shrimp. I'm completely obsessing over that, and I want that so badly to be my fish, first inhabitants of this Evo tank. Please don't tell me I can't get them.
Okay, so first I'm reading in chat. Mike Lemming and William Feltner. I am not a fan of flame angels. Just gonna throw that out there. Anytime that anybody has had a flame angel in their tank and they're wondering why stuff isn't opening, it's because of that. It's because of that fish, guaranteed. So
is that the one that looks like a really bright red, orangish red arrowhead?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
gorgeous,
man,
gorgeous animal. But I'm just
Yeah.
throwing it out there. They eat coral. Okay, but Watchman and pistol. No, that is perfectly safe for a reef tank. The one thing that you might be disappointed with is sometimes those guys are super reclusive. I was going to do this video all about like these symbiotic relationships between like you were talking about like a fish and an invert, or an invert and an invert, stuff like that. So I went out and actually purchased all of these different pairs, okay? And the reason that I haven't made this video is because every single one of them is hiding, and I haven't seen them ever again. Of them. So I'm like, well, I can't exactly recommend these things if I never see them. But no, as far as like the safety in the aquarium, they're fine.
Okay, I'm so relieved to hear you say that. And it's funny that you bring that up, because when I fell in love with them was at the pet store that I was at 2 weeks ago when I got the rock. And come to think of it, this guy had these coral tanks where his corals were for sale, just like yours are, not up against the wall. They were in the middle of the room, and so you could walk all the way around. And the pistol shrimp and the goby that were working together were on what would be considered like the backside, like in the back corner. And so, yeah, if that happened in this tank, I'd be so pissed, because it's like the whole reason why I want to get them is because I want to watch them work together, because that's just the coolest thing ever. So, all right, before I get yelled at for going too far off track, you mentioned that soft corals. Why did I think there was three? Why did I think there was three? LPS, SPS, and...
Okay, so the LPS SPS thing, that's talking about the stony coral side of things. There are certain corals that are kind of lumped in as large polyp stony corals, and then there's other corals that are lumped into the small polyp stony corals. And like back in the 80s, early 90s, there were some generalizations that you could make about how difficult something was going to be, whether it was small polyp or large polyp. These days, I don't think that there's a lot of value in that distinction, because there's so many examples of small polyp stony corals that are easy, and so many examples of large polyp stony corals that are challenging. And the sort of things that people attribute to small polyp stony corals, that's kind of like the defining characteristics, meaning like strong flow requirements, high lighting, extremely like stable water chemistry, like all of these things, like high demand stuff, like a lot of calcium. They're really describing one coral that happens to be an SPS. They're talking about Acropora. And literally, it only applies to Acropora, because just about every other SPS does not need nearly that much attention. It's just that coral, but that happens to be like the king of the SPS world. So when people say, oh, SPS versus LPS, what they're really saying is Acropora and stuff that looks like Acropora, even though it doesn't really apply to that whole umbrella. It's one genus. And then everything else it has, like, big fleshy polyps, and that's on the LPS side. And there's stuff that's in between, like Cephastria. It's like, is that an LPS? Is that an SPS? I don't really know. It's kind of in between, that sort of thing. So
okay, so where I got 3 was soft corals,
mm-hmm.
LPS, SPS. That's the 3 that was confusing me. Okay, I
gotcha.
get it. And so you've already answered in that explanation of the 3, which is the easiest. You said soft corals.
Overwhelmingly, yeah.
Yeah, you didn't say they're easy to keep, but they're easier of the different types of corals. Let me just say, before we move forward, Thein was nice enough to send me some videos, which I will share while we're talking here today. And Thein, you know what those videos are. I don't. I've watched them, but I don't know what any of that stuff is. So whenever you want me to start playing those, just let me know, and I can play them. But I'll play them over top of us talking, folks, because I can share my screen. So what would you recommend then? I'm assuming you're going to talk about the soft corals, but for somebody like me, now, I mean, I'm a good fish keeper. I do my work. I enjoy doing the work. It's part of the fun for me. But I do want some stuff that's easier so I don't get discouraged right off the bat. What would you recommend as, I'm going to make my first purchase, the first corals that somebody like me go out and get or order from your website or whatever?
So again, staying with like the soft coral end of the spectrum, we're talking about leathers, like leather corals. Generally speaking, are very, very, very tolerant of a lot of different types of water conditions. Mushroom corals, also very tolerant, and zoanthids. Now, zoanthids are kind of a mixed bag. So I guess so I sent you 4 videos, okay? So the first 2 that I would look at are the mushrooms and the leathers. Because once you get into the zoanthids, I think that most seasoned hobbyists would consider zoanthids pretty easy. The problem with zoanthids is that they are the most susceptible to the most number of things going wrong. Like the number of random pests that only eat zoanthids, it's astronomical. Like they get weird bacterial diseases. I've had saltwater spiders that ate zoanthids. There's sea slugs that eat zoanthids. There's flatworms that eat zoanthids. There's fish that eat zoanthids. There's crabs that eat zoanthids. So any number of things could go wrong. But assuming that there isn't an active pest situation or a disease or anything like that going on, basically if there's nothing going wrong, they're pretty easy coral. And another reason to consider them is they grow pretty quickly once they get going, and they come in just about every type of color combination imaginable. So if you do well with that and you wanted to supplement your tank with a certain type of color, you can find it in the zoanthid world. There's no color out there that doesn't that isn't represented with zoas. They're extremely diverse. And the last video I have is a Tracheophilia, which is a kind of a brain coral. There are easier to keep LPS, large polypsone corals, and so that's just an example of one. And sometimes people just like to keep 1 or 2 of that type of coral because it can act as a big centerpiece. And so when you see it, you'll kind of understand why. It's a pretty striking looking piece. So yeah, whenever you want, you could just start playing the videos, and I'll just talk and explain what the heck is going on.
Let me just say, zoanthids are one of those things that I was kind of leaning towards. So I'm
sure,
I'm perplexed here because you're it was my understanding that they were a good beginner one, that they were, not hard. And I love all of the different colors, and I love the fact that people say they spread really fast and all of that. So, and correct me if I'm wrong. We're going to talk about money later, but zoanthids are relatively inexpensive too, right? I mean, they're not.
It's the whole spectrum. So you can get a zoanthid polyp mat. So these things are pretty tiny, and I would say that they're about 1/8 of an inch on average in size, and they grow in these colonies. So there are beautiful ones that you can get in the $20 range, and you get a little starter plug or whatever, or even in some cases like a nice sized rock of it. And somebody is mentioning you should warn about Palytoxin too. Palytoxin is something that's in some zoanthids. It's in some Palythoas. It is probably the most lethal toxin on Earth. Like, if it gets into your bloodstream, there's a really good chance you don't make it to the phone to call 911. Like, it's that. It's like the LD50, which is like lethal dose 50%. So when you give it to like a population of like 100 things, the quantity of toxin needed to kill half of them, that's LD50. It's measured in like nanograms. It kills everything real quick.
Oh my.
And I know somebody here in Ohio that they were propagating some zoanthids. They had it in a bucket. His dog stuck his nose into the bucket. Dog died.
No.
I know another guy that he had some zoanthids, and he just wanted to like kill them off of his rock because he was kind of sick of his zoas. And so he put it in boiling water, and the Palytoxin went airborne, and it got into his lungs, and he had some serious medical issues from that. And like, he actually went to like the CDC and everything in Atlanta to get looked at. And like, to this day, he has like health issues. And people say that Palytoxin is it's a neurotoxin. It's actually like much more than a neurotoxin. It's cytotoxic and everything. So he has like has memory loss issues and stuff. It's like really scary stuff. So, having said that, I would say that that zoanthids and Palythoa are incredibly popular in the hobby. People handle them all the time without gloves, and they don't get poisoned. It's actually very uncommon to get Palytoxin poisoning. However, the one time that it happens, you die. So it is kind of that.
I mean, and you know,
so what's the worst thing that could happen? You die. Everybody dies.
Well, yeah. At least you die doing what you love to do, right? But there's stuff like that in the freshwater hobby too. My sister called me one time like 10:30 at night panicking because she was like, this was when we had our shop and we had like 200 tanks. And she's like, John, I just watched this thing on Dateline, and a little girl put her hand in a fish tank and she got some disease and she ended up dying. And I'm like, oh my God, Karen, really? I mean, I've been doing this 20 something years, you know, so there's stories like that all over the place. And, I mean, I'll wear gloves. I'm not afraid to wear gloves. I'm manly enough to sport some gloves. It's fine with me. But so, okay, you want me to play the pictures now and you can just talk over these? Or
all right, let's take a look.
Let's see what we got here. Here we go. I'll just start with the first one that pops up.
Okay.
And there we are. Now, I'm going to have to keep this on me, and I think it will stay on me. So there we go. Hopefully it doesn't switch to you when we're talking. If it does, I'll switch it back.
Okay. I don't know if it's switching or not. But right now what you're seeing is like it's like called a leather coral. It's a toadstool leather. And this is a kind of a time lapse of it going from fully closed to fully open. So you can see kind of how the polyps are extending. These guys are pretty consistent in coloration. And that's kind of what's nice. Like, there's certain corals that if you give them different lighting, they'll turn into some other color that doesn't look quite as good. But these guys are very tough. They can handle like some degree of neglect as far as like water quality goes. Don't need the strongest lighting or anything like that. They don't. You don't need to like worry about calcium or alkalinity levels that much with them because they're soft corals. They don't have a skeleton. And in some cases, I know that John, you were talking about you wanted to have some clownfish. Sometimes clownfish even host in these things as if they were anemones. And they get huge, by the way. You can get them to grow to be like 2 feet in diameter.
Sorry, I'm trying to control this while you're talking, and
is it going back and forth?
Well, no, I started one of them over, and it seems like now we're having some kind of technical issue. Hold on, let me do this here, because on the feed it stopped. All right, hang on.
No, no worries.
Okay, now back to me. Nobody wants to look at me. Let me make sure that the feed is working. Nope, it's showing that it's frozen. John disappeared. Oh, there I am. Okay, I'm back now. All right, so let me get this back on here. And okay, there we go. Now I pushed play.
These are zoanthids. And like I said, they come in just about every color imaginable. These things are tiny too. I mean, I think they probably look big on screen, but this is like a macro photo. Like it's kind of zooming in nice and tight. But yeah, they're fast growing. The only thing that you have to watch out for, other than the obvious like Palytoxin poisoning issues, is that, you know, and it's so ironic because this stuff is so it has such lethal toxins, but so many things can eat it with no impunity. Fish eat these things all the time. All manner of other invertebrates can just come and chomp these little guys, and it's like not a big deal to them. So its poison is just for us. Now, what was I thinking about zoas? I lost my train of thought.
Well, just for the record, I've got another video playing now, but it seems like this thing is messing up every time I go to play another video. So maybe I can only play one video at a time when I'm doing my screen share or something. I don't know. So I'll play the next one, and then hopefully that'll work. So there we go.
Okay, so this is a time lapse of a brain coral. This is called a tracheophilia. I fed it some pellet food, and you can see how it starts to grab up all the little pellets, and it swells with water and just kind of grabs it in. So there's a lot of different types of stony corals that are perfectly fine for beginners. Now, these things do require like calcium and stuff like that, but they're not so fast growing that they need, you know, high levels and to have it, you know, maintained rock solid. So if you just did like regular water changes, it would get all the ions that it needed just from the water changes.
Okay, and we've got one more. Oops, let's see. That's gonna, all right, I gotta redo this again. Oh, technology is a beautiful thing. It seems like I can only do one at a time and then it cuts off. So here we go.
Live streaming is like the bleeding edge of technology. Okay,
absolutely.
So what this video is are mushroom corals. And they're, if you want to get really technical, they're not really corals. They're called corallomorphs. They're actually more similar to jellyfish and anemones than they are to true corals. But basically, yeah, kind of like a colorful mushroom polyp. They're very, very tough on average. There's only like a couple types of mushrooms that are challenging, and they come in all different types of colors. You can get them for as little as like $5 to $10, and the most expensive mushrooms are in like the $6,000 per polyp range. So it's the entire gamut. If you wanted to get into it, it has like the beginnerest of beginner corals as well as the most highly sought after coral in the entire hobby are mushrooms.
My God. Okay. Yeah, that's the end of that one. Yeah, I don't want the expensive stuff. But I mean, those are, and these are all like, this is why the Smithsonian and BBC comes after you, because these videos are just absolutely stunning. I mean, these are all of your corals that you're selling on your website. I mean, I know they're probably not the exact ones that are for sale, but these are all yours from your facility that you did these videos for?
Yeah.
Wow.
And so like, just for the folks that are hanging out in chat or watching this video later, if you wanted to check out my channel, a lot of it is centered around, you know, around videography of corals. That's kind of like a second hobby that kind of sprung up kind of by accident, just from doing the whole Reef aquarium thing. So yeah, if you like to see that sort of footage, definitely check out my channel, because I probably have close to 200 videos, and a lot of it is that type of content.
Nice. Hopefully, okay, now we're back to it, switching back and forth. I had a setting on there where I was just sitting here listening to you, and it wasn't switching back yet. Now, when you say mushrooms, I want to find this video of mine that I haven't uploaded yet, but I wanted to ask you about something because let me just see if I can find it here real quick. I'll tell you what, I'll ask you a question, and then we'll move on to, I'll show you this video because I want to find out what this is. I didn't ask the store owner what it is, and I mean, it's absolutely not something that could go in my tank. But so, and this is a perfect question to lead into that. The small nano tanks like I have. I want to talk to you about anemones in a minute for the other tank. But this small, what are you going to recommend that will work nicely in a small little nano tank like this? I mean, because I've seen corals that get as big as a human being. I mean, you know, sure. And I automatically think those are mushrooms just because of the way they look, but I don't know.
Those are probably toadstools, which is what the first video that we looked at, that one time lapse where like the polyps extended from the base. This is my cat Piper, by the way. So she's demanding attention.
Just so you know, Thein, I'm going to mute myself because I'm going to be doing a lot of clicking looking for this video, but sure, I'm listening. So if you need to, you know, get me back, just I'm going to mute myself though.
So a lot of it comes down to personal preference. And you really don't have to worry that much about a coral overgrowing a tank because that's the beauty of coral. You can usually cut them back down, and then those frags, so they're called frags for short for fragments, can be re-glued and sold to other hobbyists, back to the store or whatever. So that like neon green toadstool leather, 1-inch pieces of that sells for about $50. So if it's outgrowing your tank, that's a very good problem to have because you have just funded your whole hobby for the next several months just by clipping it back and selling off the frags. And usually there's these local events like called frag swaps where people just kind of like get together. It's like a mini trade show, and they sell these things to one another. So that's a good way to kind of finance your hobby because the reef aquarium hobby can get very expensive, but it does have at least a mechanism in it that you can pay for it yourself. So going back to the original question, what would I do if I had that tank? I would probably have like a single really nice toadstool leather to kind of like grow, kind of like almost like a tree. And then on its base, I would have all different types of mushrooms. Because one thing that I probably should have mentioned earlier is that not every coral can be kept touching one another. Corals are trying to take over the reef. So there is a constant battle for real estate. And all these different corals have different mechanisms and different techniques as to how to kill off everything around it so it can grow bigger and have babies and grow little baby corals. So you kind of have to be selective as to what you place next to one another because there are certain corals, if these two things touch, they both die. Like that's how aggressively they fight, and they die right now. Like as soon as they touch, they're gonna kill each other. So mushroom corals and leather corals, while there might be a little bit of friction going on, it's not lethal, and they can pretty much deal with it. So having like that type of mix, and then maybe having your pistol shrimp / goby pair would probably be a pretty interesting little combination in that. You know, just keep it small, keep it simple, manageable.
What about adding some zoas? Because I feel like
sure, or like just that trio, they don't do a ton of battle. You might want to just to give the mushrooms and the zoas a little bit of space because what can happen is the mushroom just slides right over top of it and just kind of covers it up. So yeah, but as far as like, you know, direct aggression, it's usually not that big of a deal.
Okay. And these mushrooms, they're going to stay smaller, or am I going to need to cut them back like I need to cut back these plants up here, you know?
It's possible that you would need to cut them back. But again, it's it's a good problem to have. That's like, those are called first world problems in like reef aquariums. It's like, oh man, my corals are growing so fast. I need to cut them back and sell them for money. It's terrible.
It's like accidentally breeding discus that you paid $300 for, and you can now sell the fry. And yeah, that's definitely a good problem to have. So, okay, well, let's move into the next one then. Probably the most popular because of the movies and because of the way that cute little clownfish with only one fin says it, anemones. I'm fascinated by them. Of course I am. I don't think I can put one in my 13-gallon, nor am I interested in it. But I naturally, when I see a clown tank, I think anemones. Do anemones really like move around? And somebody told me that. Somebody said, if you're going to put an anemone in your tank or multiples, put them in before you put anything else, because then you got to let them find their home, and then you can add other corals and stuff like that. I mean, what kind of truth is there to that?
It depends on the type of anemone. Some cruise around a lot more than others. But basically, if you get an anemone, you're resigned to the fact that it is mobile and it can do whatever it wants. So the idea that, oh, it's found its spot and it's going to stay there. It can unfind that spot right away whenever it feels like it, and it can do laps around your tank very fast. Like at some point, somebody needs to do like a time lapse of just what their anemones do at night, because they can literally go 10 feet in one evening just by deciding to go. And it'll crawl all over and sting everything along the way. So at that point, if you wanted to move your corals out of its way, that's kind of the only option, because there's no removing the anemone and placing it somewhere where you want it. It'll move to wherever it wants. And it might decide that wherever it wants is someplace new. And it might stay there for like 3 months, great. And then suddenly it's doing laps again. Something changed, something fell off the scales, and it's on the move. So usually that is a slight nuisance, but the bigger problem is if you have like uncovered pumps in your tank, or an uncovered, poorly protected overflow. Because if it ends up in a pump, it gets caught in the impeller, it gets blended and shot all over the tank and starts decaying. That's a tank crash waiting to happen. Or if it goes down into the overflow, gets caught into your return pump, gets blended, that sort of thing. So, I mean, you kind of have to treat it as a total variable in your tank. And in my systems, I kind of design the tanks in such a way where I don't have any power heads that they can jump into, and all the overflows are protected so they don't end up going down the drain, or worse yet, blocking your drain, because they could just plug it right up, and then now you have blood. And so we've actually had like a giant carpet anemone just cover an entire, it was a protected drain even. Didn't matter if it's protected. The thing is big enough that it still blocked all the flow, and we had 400 gallons leak out on the ground. But luckily it's not in my house, because that would be pretty tragic. But at the same time, it's happened to people in their homes. So yeah, anemones are definitely a wild card. You kind of have to plan around their mobility.
So then it's true then, like with my clown tank, that's what I'm calling it. I would want to put, if I'm going to add a couple of anemones, put a couple of them in first before I think about any other kinds of corals at all. Let them settle in, give them a few months or whatever, and then maybe add some more stuff. What about, like, I like the anemones that are really long fingers and stuff like that on them. I mean, I don't know what any of these things are called. What is is anemones like one of those things where there's like 750 different types of anemones, or are there just a few?
There's a lot, but the most common ones in the hobby are going to be bubble tips. So whenever you see like the clown and anemone pair, most of the time it's going to be a bubble tip that you're seeing with it. A long tentacle looks kind of similar to a bubble tip. Carpet anemones, those are less common because they're actually really good at catching and eating fish that aren't clownfish. And there's other anemones that actually eat everything, including clownfish. So those aren't typically kept. And then there's some anemones like Ritteri and Seabay that just don't do well in aquariums, and you probably shouldn't be buying those. So I would say that the vast majority of people that want to try to pair up a clownfish and an anemone are going to try a bubble of some sort. One thing that's kind of throws a wrinkle in that whole thing is that a lot of clownfish these days are captive bred, which is a great thing for the hobby. However, they lose that instinct to jump into an anemone suddenly. And they also now they host into weird stuff, like stuff that you wouldn't expect. So they're jumping into different types of coral now. Sometimes they just like hang out right next to a pump as if it was an anemone. So you really can't guarantee that if you buy a certain type of clown that it's going to host in a certain type of anemone. But your best chance is a bubble tip, I would say. And unfortunately, those are the ones that run around the most.
Wonderful. It's probably the most expensive too. That's just my luck.
The cheapest ones are going to be about $50 in that ballpark. The most expensive are quite expensive, and it's all by coloration.
I mean, $50 is not. I don't know how many fish are in there that I paid $50 a piece for. So that's not what I would consider outrageous. Again, going back to that trip to the pet store, and anybody that's watching, I did a whole video of this pet store, and it's going to upload very soon. I was one of those guys that said, well, I'm not going to get anemones because that's what everybody expects with a clown tank, and I'm not going to do that. But then I went to that store. This guy had the biggest clownfish I've ever seen. It was a yellow striped maroon clown, which again, I'd never seen. And it was Washington Redskins colors. So it was beautiful. Cleveland Cavaliers colors too. But beautiful fish. And it was in this anemone and just would not go away from it. It was just lived there religiously. And the fascinating thing about this fish, and this blew my mind because I'd never heard of anything like this in my life. The fish store owner said that fish was 29 years old, that one clown. I didn't think fish lived that long, but he said he got that fish right when the store opened, and he's had the store for 29 years. And the interesting, the even worse thing about that is while we were there, we're standing in an area near that tank, and it's in this giant bow front tank. This lady walked by, and she put her hand up at the top of the tank. That clown, 29-year-old clown, jumped out of the tank trying to get after that woman and ended up on the floor. But the owner said she's been doing that forever. She just jumps out of the tank. We put her back in the tank, and she gets her bell rung a little bit. But
yeah. So when you mentioned it was a gold bar maroon clown. That is the most aggressive thing in the ocean.
I believe it. I mean, that fish
is the meanest thing. And the whole you're trying to bite somebody's finger off. That's par for the course. Those things draw blood.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, you can't put your hand in that water.
Yeah, I mean, just standing. I've got a video of this fish, which will be in my video that I upload. I've got a great video of the fish, and she is in the anemone and keeps coming out like just me sitting there filming her. She wanted to come out and get me. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, that is the come at me bro of fish right there.
That's awesome. Okay, so bubble tip, that's what I will look for. I'm excited about that. I got to put something else in that tank. I have added a couple of new friends in there for the clown and the damsel, but now let's move in because we've already been going an hour and a half. I don't know if you realize that. I want to touch on a couple of things real quick, and then I will let you go because I know your time is valuable, and the baseball game is on and everything else. Acclimation of corals. I mean, this is something I absolutely have to talk to you about before we get off of here because I've never bought one, never one. And so when I get my first order of corals, I want to make sure that I do it right. Is there like a particular procedure for acclimating? I know the answer is yes, but tell me what the procedure is for acclimating corals, and are there different acclimation procedures for different types and stuff like that? Because I know nothing.
I don't think it's a lot different than fish, to be perfectly honest. Like the way that we do it is we put them all into like a tub, like a container, little Rubbermaid tank, and we slowly add some of the salt water from our tanks into that tub. just to get like the salt mixing, and also just to kind of to get the temperature close. Like I don't even bother with the floating the bag to stabilize temperature. It's like the mixing of the water kind of does that, as well as getting the chemistry kind of similar. Some people like to drip acclimate, and that is fine, but you want to avoid a situation where the drip is so slow that by the time that you're done dripping, the water is going to be different than the tank water anyway. So if basically all of our acclimation takes place in under 20 minutes or so. And there's some folks out there that literally go 3 hours. We don't do that. 20 minutes is all they get. And the other thing that we try to do is we try to do some prophylactic dipping, meaning that there's different coral dips that are available, or just like some household chemicals that are sometimes used. Like right now we're using Bayer insect killer, and that is just to knock down any potential outbreaky type things. Like the last thing you want to do is introduce a flatworm infestation into like a 1,000-gallon system that you'll never get rid of. Like if you can stop one plague, it's worth the exercise of dipping. I don't know if there's anything like that for fish. Is there for freshwater? I don't know.
Not that I'm aware of. I mean,
it's like malachite green or something like that. Is that a thing? I don't know.
Yeah, and methylene blue, there are definitely things that you could dip fish into or quarantine them in for several days, if not weeks. But as far as incorporating something like that into an acclimation procedure, I don't know anybody that does that. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist, but I don't know anybody that does that.
Yeah. So right. So essentially, like all that we try to do when it comes to acclimation is get the temperatures pretty close, get the water chemistry pretty close, and then once we put it into the tank, we try to give them a little bit more flow than they would normally get, just because that way it'll kind of wash away any kind of like stress mucus that the corals might be kind of lathered up in during like the transport process. So yeah, we try to, again, keep that as simple as possible. But I mean, some people are certainly more conservative and they take longer doing the drip method. But for us, nothing more than 20 minutes.
Okay. Well, I feel better about that then. I mean, and the dips, I don't think I'm ready to mix up my own at home or anything like that. But the dips are readily available. I mean, that's something I can pick up.
So there's like Coral RX is a popular one. There's Revive. There is a Tropic Marin makes one. So a lot of those dips are kind of like a pine oil basing. So when you smell it, it smells like pine sol. And if you wanted to do some research, there is like I said, Bayer, like this Bayer insect killing stuff. It's like kind of like creamy like milk. That has been like very effective at killing stuff that happens to be, hitchhiking on coral. And there's another thing that's a lot less common called levamisol. And levamisol, I don't know how super legal it is. It is it's a pig dewormer, okay?
Oh.
Which is normal. Like, why should that be legal? But it's used to cut cocaine.
Oh my God.
So I guess it raises red flags when you're ordering levamisol online.
By the gallon.
Yeah, just throwing that out there because it's a white powdery substance that does a good job of killing invertebrates and cutting cocaine.
Oh my. Well, that's good. Okay, well, this conversation has done exactly what I wanted it to, which is make me just build my confidence even more to getting my first corals, whether they be going down to the store and getting some or doing what I'm leaning more towards, which is ordering them from you. And I thought of that way before you and I met and started talking here, but mainly because I saw my first exposure to you was the videos that Frank Reese did for Blue Zoo TV. He went to your spot there and did a couple of videos there, and I saw those a long time ago, and then started watching them again recently, and then went to your website and I saw the live sales that you do on Sunday and stuff like that, and I'm like, yeah, okay, this looks like it's the one. So talk for a little bit about your website, what people can expect there. I'm pretty confident that's where I'm going to be putting in my first order. And then also talk about the special thing that you're offering my viewers, those that are lucky enough to have stayed long enough to watch this whole thing. Talk about what you're offering to my viewers too.
Okay, so if you guys are curious about the saltwater hobby in general, you can check out my website, tidalgardens.com. It's mainly there to sell coral. Let's be honest. But if you wanted to do any type of research on a particular kind of coral that you kind of liked, there's a good chance that I've done a video on it. So if you click on any of those corals, there's a video where I do like between, I don't know, 3 to 10 minutes on kind of what the requirements are, things to look out for and whatnot. Some of them are appropriate for a beginner, some of them are not. But in general, the site has a corresponding video for just about everything. I've been trying to see if there's even any pages on it that don't have a video associated. So you can kind of just peruse it, and if you find topics that are interesting to you, you can just, like I said, find a ton of video content about it. We also do a live sale once a month, plus some special events. And the only special event that we do is Halloween, which is, how convenient, coming up on the 29th, Saturday the 29th. And unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, that show is a little bit different than our regular live shows in that we all just get dressed up and just start drinking. So we do sell coral during the Halloween live show, but it's a question mark how well I keep it together for that whole thing. But for the live shows, it's kind of similar to this. We have a conversation with the folks in chat. If they have questions about particular corals, we can answer it either in the chat or I'll answer verbally just to talk about reefs and whatnot. So yeah, that's pretty much what you can expect from Tidal Gardens channel as well as the website. As far as special offer, we have a coupon code just for you guys. If you guys have set up saltwater tanks. I mean, I realize that this is mainly a freshwater channel. I believe the code is KGTropicals, and you can use it as a discount code when checking out to get 10% off your order.
How about that? Look at that, folks. That's a beautiful thing. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to order mine from you. And I'm not just saying that. I mean, I plan to anyway. I was going to ask you about, what should people look for and, picking the right retailer and all that kind of stuff. But I'm not going to get into that because it's already late and I've already had you for so long. But I can speak just from my standpoint. To me, so much of it is about feeling. Whether it's physically being in a pet store or going on a website. I have been to both sides of the spectrum as far as physically going to saltwater stores recently. I'm not going to name what they are, but I went to one and had an unbelievable experience. It's the one I've been talking about throughout this whole conversation here, where I went in with my old lady and her jaw dropped and she was just in la la land. We had a fun experience there. I learned a lot. I walked out feeling more confident than when I walked in. There's another one that I went to by myself, and it was horrible. I mean, it was a nightmare. I would not spend my money in that store. And I'm not here to disparage other businesses, so I'm not going to talk about what store that was, but it was bad. And I think that websites are the same way. To me, it's all about feeling. It's like you go to a website, is it straight up like all we want is your money and, this is what we have, take it or leave it? Or is the site a place that makes you feel good, almost like you're at a store talking to the owner and the owner's a great guy? Do you feel good about what they're offering? Are the prices reasonable? Is it a professional looking website? And is there information to back up the products? And that's what I love about your website. And that's what I'm trying to do with mine too. I've recently started doing those individual product videos because I want to do that. I want, for when somebody goes, for something simple. You know, they look at a bottle of stress coat and they want to know what that is. I want to do a video on that and explain it. And I love that about your site. And so that's, to me, what sold it. And then not only that, but your corals are absolutely beautiful. So
thanks. Appreciate that.
I mean, that's, of course, going to be the number one selling point. And believe it or not, for me, being new to this and being somebody not of well means as far as financially, I go presentation first. I go comfort level with the staff and with the, you know, the overall thing. And the last thing I look is at price. And sometimes I get brokenhearted because I'll get dead set on a company and then I'm like, oh man, that's beautiful, but I can't afford any of their stuff. So not the case with you though. I've enjoyed myself going on your website. So, and I'm not just trying to sell it here. I mean, yes, I appreciate you spending your time here with me tonight and educating me along with everybody else that watches this. You know as well as I do, there might not be a ton of people in here watching it live, but it's going to get much more serious play to, you know, the replay once it uploads. I have a lot of appreciation for what you've done. That's not why I'm sitting here kissing your ass. I mean, I'm doing it because I believe it's warranted. I wouldn't have had you on here just out of desperation. I mean, I had you on here because I believe in you. I believe in your product. And so there you go. I mean, I'm done. No,
it's a lot of fun. I'm glad. Thanks for having me. It's always, you know what? I love doing YouTube live shows. Like that is just, that's my jam. So anytime.
Well, let me ask you this one more thing, and then I'm going to let you go because, I mean, we're at the bottom of the fourth inning here, and I got to watch some baseball. Will you come
Indians.
back? Oh, forget your Indians. Will you come back? Well, I'm going to order up some corals. Will you come back and maybe, you know, once I have them in, maybe work with me on, you know, what I should do next? Maybe
Sure.
We can do a whole thing on care and stuff like that. Maybe, you know, give it a month or so and then, you know, come back and do a follow-up to this.
Yeah, be happy to.
Cool. Outstanding. Well, I'm excited. This has been a lot of fun, and I'm not going to sit here and brown nose you anymore. I really do appreciate this very much. I saw somebody ask in the chat, directed towards Thein, do you follow up with are you available to help customers answer questions and things like that? I mean, look what he's doing right now. I think I can answer that for him. Yes.
Well,
the guy.
yes. So there's an outside chance that I might miss your email, but you can always get in touch with me on social media. So chances are if somebody's asked, or if you have a question, chances are somebody else is also wondering the same thing. And so a lot of times I address like Q&A on Twitter. Also, like I said, just about every month I do a live show. So if you just hop on and you can ask the question live, and usually you'll get an answer from either somebody that's like moderating chat or myself. Yeah, but we try to be as responsive as possible.
And his live streams are a whole lot better presentation than mine. Trust me when I say that. I mean, it's a beautiful thing that you have going on there. So, wow, excuse me. So yeah, I mean, I watched the last one, and I probably watched an hour and a half of it, and I enjoyed it. So it was a lot of fun. So, all right, I'm gonna go ahead and shut this down. Thein, I just have to say thank you once again. I cannot wait to put in the order. And folks, don't forget, I'm gonna be putting this everywhere. You're gonna see it. Trust me. If you go to his website, tidalgardens.com, and you order up some corals. If you put KGTropicals in the promo box at checkout, get 10% off. Come on. Who else is doing that kind of thing? That's a beautiful thing. We're getting into the busy season in the aquarium keeping world. And so who couldn't use 10% off? That's a beautiful thing. So thank you once again, Thein. And I look forward to doing this again.
Fantastic. Thanks again.